Hello, y'all. Hope you're all doing well. This is RJ, live from Staunton, Virginia, here in Thornrose Cemetery. Right now, I'm in the Stonewall Confederate section. I'm going to share this with you and talk about the city a little bit. I'm going to start here, and then I'm going to continue on down here to go to Jeb Hotchkiss's gravesite, that famous map maker that stayed with Stonewall Jackson, made all those famous maps, made all those, really helped make all the successes in Shenandoah Valley if so possible. Then we're gonna continue over that beautiful stone archway bridge that's over here, made possible by the Daughters of Confederacy. Read to you an awesome plaque that's over there. And then I'm gonna continue on to go to and finish up at General John Echols' gravesite. But to begin with, I'm here in the Confederate section. Looks like they're gonna have a ceremony here sometime soon. Now, there are just about 1,800 Southern Americans, Confederates, that are buried here, nearly all in unmarked graves, almost half unknown. This memorial right here talks about that, speaks about it, how there's about 800 that are known by name and regiment and state. There's about 200 that are only known by their name only, and there's about 700 that are completely known only to God, unknown, all nearly entirely in unmarked graves. But there are a few exceptions, made possible by the donations of others who made it possible. But I'm going to share this with you, memorial, and then I'm going to continue on to share with you this beautiful portion. This right here speaks about the unknown. On this side, you read about the unknowns that are buried here. As unknown and yet well known, around the shaft are gathered also the remains of about 700 Confederate soldiers, not recorded by name, from fields of Allegheny, McDowell, Cross Keys, Port Republic, Piedmont, etc. Virginia forgets not any who died in her defense. I wish that's how it should be. On this side here, a quote by General Lee: "There is a true glory and a true honor, the glory of duty done, the honor of the integrity of principle." And on this side, speaks of those who are known. Like I said, there's close to about 1,800 or so total buried here. It says, "Honor to the brave. 870 lie here, recorded by name, company, regiment," and it lists off the places they're from, like Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, and so forth. It says 207 are recorded by name only. So you add all those up, the 870 plus 200 plus the others on the side, almost about 1,800 folks, Southern Americans, Confederates, that are buried right here, almost entirely all in unmarked graves. This right here talks about this site maintained by the 5th Virginia Company reenactors. Really appreciate the reenactors. And reading this on this side, this monument memorial, as I remember, was placed here of about 1888 or so, in the 1880s. Features a Confederate soldier standing at rest on top. "Weigh not their worth by the balance of battle. These have glorified their cause by the record of noble sacrifice, the simple manhood of their lives, the patient endurance of suffering, and the heroism of death. May such fidelity and patriotism endure forever. Amen." Like I said, they're nearly all are in unmarked graves. This is an exception right here, and I'm going to go share with you on the way out, share with you another headstone over here that was to General George Washington's grandnephew. Pretty much all of General George Washington's relatives support the Confederacy. Many are buried there in Charlestown, West Virginia, which was Virginia at the time. You can read about their lives there, and how when the Union invaders came through there, just wrecked their homes. Many of them died. So I'm going to make a transition over here to this particular memorial. It's in memory of the Confederate soldiers from Staunton and Augusta County. Not for fame or reward, not for place or rank, not lured by ambition or goaded by necessity, but in simple obedience to duty, as they understood it. These men suffered all, sacrificed all, dared all, and died. No stately abbey will ever cover their remains. Their dust will never repose beneath fretted or frescoed roof. No costly bronze will ever emblazon their names for posterity to honor. But the Potomac and the Rappahannock, the James and the Chickahominy, the Cumberland and the Tennessee, the Mississippi and the Rio Grande, as they run their long race from the mountains to the sea, will sing of their prowess forever, forevermore. I remember one time I came here and I put 2 flags here about 2 years ago. It was a nice quiet day like it is now. And I drove back by, and only 10 minutes later, and their stick flags were already gone. It's like, who took these? Often I keep 100, 200 stick flags, 18-inch flags in my car wherever I travel. And I always like to leave them at places like this. And to me, it's worth it. I bought them mostly at cost. So it cost me close to $1.50 a piece, but it's totally worth it if I know even if I know and expect it's going to be removed by the Mayo Marxist cancel culture woke who can't stand to have a historical accurate flag, who can't stand to have somebody respecting somebody, a veteran. So it's worth it to me to keep a flag there, even if I know it's going to be removed at some point. Like I said, most of these are unmarked graves, but there are a few exceptions. So for example, right here, somebody put 2 headstones right here. I'm sure family members. Somebody came through here, and that's why I definitely appreciate those who do their ancestry, do their genealogy, look at their family tree, recognize their family members, should have a headstone. They come out here and purchase one and put one out here. Reminds me a lot of what's going on in Fredericksburg, Virginia. There's 3,500 buried over there. There's 2,000 unknown buried in a mass grave right in the center, right underneath that monument. Unfortunately, their names are forgotten. But the fortunate ones, there are about 1,500 or so that have headstones, and they're getting old. They're over 100 years old and getting very faded. So slowly but surely, the Ladies Memorial Association, with the help of Sons of Confederate Veterans and others, are slowly trying to replace those. Not replace them, but put new markers just like this at the base. But these cost close to $300 a piece. So, but they're getting there. I think they're about a third, maybe almost halfway done with that. I wanted to particularly draw attention to this one right here. That is Thomas B. Alexander. I think that the B stands for Blackburn, as I remember. Corps, Company G, 2nd Virginia Infantry, Confederate States Army. He died 1863. Or no, I'm sorry, 1862. He was one of George Washington's great-grandnephews. Basically, he was the direct descendant of George Washington's brother. Should be no surprise that all of George Washington's relatives supported the Confederacy. Same with our other important founding fathers like Thomas Jefferson and George Mason and Patrick Henry and others. You can see here, this is a Memorial Weekend. It looks like they're preparing to have a ceremony out here. I have not heard about it. I was hoping to get lucky and be able to join in, It's not going to happen. I am planning on going to 3 memorial services tomorrow. Tomorrow will be Memorial Day. Starting off at the Fredericksburg Confederate Cemetery and going over to Spotsylvania Courthouse, Confederate Cemetery, and then finishing up at Gordonsville. But I love how this has been maintained right here. Beautiful flowers adorn this. Over here as well, and I'll read this. Here's the Etta Memorial. So if you go to this part of the cemetery, here in the stone wall, which is very impressive, all this impressive stonework right here. There's basically these 3 main monuments. The one in the background I started off with over here, the one we just walked to, and also this one right here. Reading this one, "Crown me with flowers," cried Merbu in his last hour, and loving friends brought them. Long may the graves of these Confederate soldiers be strewn with the first flowers of springtime, as a fitting tribute to the matchless valor and exalted worth. Here are they who marched away, followed by our hopes and fears. Nobler never went than they, to bloodier matter fray, in the lapse of all the years. Garland still shall wreathe the swords that they drew amid our cheers, children's lisps, women's words, sunshine and the song of birds. Greet them here through all the years. And if you can hear, that's exactly what I hear right now, is some birds in the background. But definitely very hallowed ground, special place here in Thornrose Cemetery, the Confederate section, known as also Stonewall. These beautiful flowers and this impressive work here. And that's why I'm going to continue on soon and go to the other impressive stonework bridge that was made possible at UDC. I'll start walking over to to Jeb Hotchkiss's gravesite here in just one moment, but finishing up this beautiful scene here on this beautiful day. Thank you to all those who help maintain, preserve, take care of these hallowed grounds. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and start my transition over to the gravesite of General Jeb, it's not General, of Jed Hotchkiss, who was the personal map maker, cartographer for many staffs, and particularly well known for being on the staff and the map maker for General General Stonewall Jackson. So you can see off in the distance, we're gonna be walking over there to this bridge over here, the stone area, making our way over. So Jeb Hotchkiss was an impressive man who was actually born in New York. He started school out there. He went to school there in Pennsylvania. And then he ultimately moved here to the Shenandoah Valley. You can see the town, part of the town of Staunton, Virginia in the background. It's a beautiful area. It's a very hilly type of area. You can see some of the Shenandoah Mountains off in the background, this direction. I'll tell you what, it's a beautiful time to be out here right now. It reminds me of that headstone I just shared on Dixie Forever. And it was basically over there in the Gettysburg section of Hollywood Cemetery in Richmond, Virginia. And there's a headstone that reads, "Born in New York, died an American," because he died in the Confederacy. So Jeb Hotchkiss, quite an incredible man that we're walking towards his gravesite right now. And then I'm going to finish it up with General John Echols' gravesite over here, which is also very impressive. I encourage you to read about him. A man who was there from the very beginning of the war to the very end of the war. He was there at the Battle of First Manassas. He actually served under Stonewall Jackson. So it's fitting that many of Stonewall Jackson's staff are buried right here close together just down the street from the Confederate cemetery section. So Jeb Hotchkiss, once again, settled here in Staunton, Virginia. When the war broke out, he supported his adopted state. And then he offered his services when he was under one of the staff position, and those maps became legendary. So highly important. One of the things he was tasked with doing was to create a map of the entire Shenandoah Valley that had never been done before. And it's incredible that he undertook that task and made a map, a very detailed, the best map ever of the Shenandoah Valley. And then during all those campaigns with General Stonewall Jackson, he was the one who was tasked to make the maps, and General Stonewall Jackson used that to his advantage. That's why he said he is the most key member, the most key person to all the critical successes that Stonewall Jackson had in the Shenandoah Valley. That he relied so heavily on the maps that this man made right here. And that is Jeb Hotchkiss. So I'm going to read this right here, and here is his gravesite. The map maker for General Stonewall Jackson is where he lies. In fact, we all know about that incredible victory the South had, the Confederate had, the defenders had when they were defending their homes there in Chancellorsville, and they were greatly outnumbered. Robert E. Lee only has 60,000 men up against about 130,000 Union invaders. And incredibly, Hotchkiss brought to Stonewall Jackson's attention after he made a map of a road that allowed a flanking motion. General Jackson worked with him on that one, and he then relayed that to General Lee, and General Lee agreed. General Lee took a very risky move there at Chancellorsville. He left General Robert E. Lee with only 15,000 men up against 130,000 for a day's time. And General Stonewall Jackson was able to flank using the map that this man right here, Jeb Hotchkiss made. So a salute to him today. Reading this in his headstone, Jeb Hotchkiss, born in Windsor, New York. Born in 1828, died here in Staunton, Virginia, January 17th, 1899. Now the blessed, the righteous when he dies. There's a home dedicated to him in this area. In fact, there's his home that he was born in New York is on the National Registry there in New York. Speaks more about his life. I'm glad they included this. He's a topographical engineer, 2nd Corps, Army, Northern Virginia, CSA. Served on the staff of Colonel T.J. Heck and Generals R.E. Lee, T.J. Jackson, A.P. Hill, R.S. Ewell, and Ewell A. Early. After the war, he was a very accomplished man as well, kept industrious his whole entire life. You can read here. He's an original fellow of the Geographical Society. He was a member of the American Geological Society, Scotch-Irish, Virginia and Massachusetts Historical Societies, American Association for the Advancement of Science, American Institute of Mining Engineers, and a Judge of Mines and Minerals in Chicago of 1899. Quite an accomplished man. So I encourage you to read about him. At the conclusion of the war, General Grant said, "You can keep your maps. They're the best maps there are." But then later on, the military tried to confiscate him. They approached him and tried to confiscate his maps, and he absolutely refused. Later on, General Grant asked for his maps and put them in some of the key volumes, the official government documentation of the war. His maps were that good. So once again, just leaving this with you. From here, and then I'm gonna make a transition over to the other cool things to go look at. There's the wife, Nellie Hotchkiss, the wife of George Holmes. Now we'll make a transition over to this cool bridge. It was made possible by the United States Confederacy. And on the side here is a plaque that I had overlooked the first few times that I came here. It's really very cool. So this was placed here back in This was placed here a little while back. Then I'm going to walk across this bridge and share this with you. So the United States Confederacy that were involved in making this bridge possible, you know, they haven't just created things for just the Confederacy. As I've traveled around, I've seen many memorials that were dedicated not just to Confederates, but also World War I monuments, World War II, Spanish American in particular. That's why there's many Confederate memorials that are combined, that are a combination of World War I and Confederate memorials as well. So you see these really cool plaques right here. I wanted to read this one. I just particularly love what it says right here. You gotta listen up on this one. It says, "This bronze commemorates to generations which knew them not, the Virginia volunteers from Augusta in the Army of the Confederate States. 22 companies from here followed Jackson Stuart, with many in command. No rebels they, but worthy sons of patriotic sires, who took up arms in the hour of their state's extremity, when argument for peace was ended, to defend the soil, the homes, and the constitutional rights won by their fathers. The world has seen no braver nor truer soldiery than the yeomen whose deeds made glorious this valley of the Shenandoah, and their fame rests secure as their native hills. If they justified not the cause for which they were ready to die, they ennobled themselves and may be forgiven by the sons of men, who for a conscious sake fought against their government at Lexington and Bunker Hill." So you're making that connection as you read about the many ties, all the similarities between the American Revolution and the Southern American Confederate cause. That's why it's no surprise many argue that the real Americans were the Southern Americans, the real heirs of the Constitution, the real heirs of the Declaration of Independence, the real heirs of the ideals of our founding fathers and colonial Americans was the South, was the Confederate soldiers. Over here on this side, you can read about this tablet is in memory of the settlers of the Great Valley of Virginia, who had courage to lead the way beyond the mountains and give what Governor Gooch desired for Providence, a line of defense against the savages of demanding immunity in the religion by the freedom from fears and alarms. So you can read more about that. So just one more peek, and then I'm going to walk over this bridge, and you can kind of see from here, I'm going to walk over to General John Echols' gravesite right over there. It's very impressive. So I'm going to go walk over this in just a moment. Once again, really impressive. Right here is a very prominent location, right in the main entry here in Staunton, Virginia, here in this Thornrose Cemetery. Very peaceful, very serene, nice cemetery. I'm going to walk over there, but I'm going to finish up with I'm just going to read this one more time. It's worth mentioning, then I'm going to walk over. I think this is so powerful. "No rebels they, but worthy sons of patriotic sires, who took up arms in the hour of their state's extremity, when argument for peace was ended, to defend the soil, the homes, and the constitutional rights won by their fathers. The world has seen no braver nor truer soldiery than the yeomen whose deeds made glorious this valley of the Shenandoah, and their fame rests secure as their native hills." Thought that was worth repeating. It's awesome. Now I'm going to make a transition and go over to General John Echols. I was thinking about just doing 2 separate videos, but might as well just do a little walking through here, a little chatting. See right here, this is a plaque for trustees of Thornrose. Once again, here in Thornrose Cemetery. Really impressive little walking over this bridge. This door is so once again here in Thornrose Cemetery, impressive right here in this beautiful area. Love coming through here. This is on the Shenandoah Valley area. See, there's hills off in the distance, mountains. Unfortunately, this nice little town, Dixie, was found by Yankees, the carpetbaggers, and so there's been problems with woke culture here. They came in here, they found this nice little place, they wanted to change it and strip out all of its identity. So it's so sad that there was a school named Robert E. Lee, and I went over there, I took pictures of it back when it was called Robert E. Lee, back about 5-6 years ago. And they removed this name, Robert E. Lee, from that school. And then there was a hotel in the area that was called Stonewall Jackson. And I went over there, took pictures of that as well. I wish I had my drone at the time. But there was it was known for Stonewall Jackson. It had a big sign on top of the building. You could see it throughout town. And unfortunately, the woke Mayoists got a hold of that too. Now I'll make a transition over here. But there's a lot of good folks otherwise, though. And these hallowed grounds are really special places. Making the transition over here to the gravesite of General John Echols. Really very impressive. Known as a very imposing man, 6'4". He was there from the very beginning to the very end. He was there under General Thomas Stonewall Jackson's command there at the First Battle of Manassas. Served in many different war battles. Ultimately was severely injured one time. Was there at all those, like Second Battle of Manassas. Was there at Droop Mountain. If you ever go to Droop Mountain State Park there in West Virginia, you can read about him there as well. But quite an impressive man. He was actually a legislator, a diplomat before the war. And he was on the board there in I think it was Monroe County in Union, West Virginia. And he voted for secession, just like the other delegate did. In fact, the entire county voted on it, right? It was a diplomatic process. They voted on it, and that county voted about 1,100 votes for secession. Only about 80 opposed it. So over 10 to 1 wanted to just secede, just live their own separate lives, free from a distant government wanting to control them. Just reading some of this, I love, there's a lot of commentary on this particular memorial here. Thou shalt come to thy grave in a full age, like as a shock of corn cometh to its season. Quote from Job 3:26. Just walking around here and doing the best I can to read some of this. Most of the commentary on his accomplishments are right here, and I'll read that in just a moment. But on this side, oh, why should the spirit of mortal be proud? Like a swift fleeting meteor, a fast flying cloud, a flash to the lightning, a break of the wave, he passeth from life to his rest in the grave. He knows the great secret. I'll do the best I can to read some of this. A little challenging to read some of this here, but it says, eminent in his profession, in civil life, he filled many positions of trust and honor, with credit to himself and to his native state. He entered the Confederate Army at the first call to arms. He served with the close of the war, winning his way by gallant conduct through successive grades until he obtained the rank of brigadier general. As a man, he exemplified the shining virtues of friendship and patriotism, and through long and eventful career, held the respect and esteem of his fellow citizens. Wise, just, generous, and true, He earned affection and confidence and gratitude in life, and his name will be honored so long as the nobler attributes of humanity are revered. That's the key right there. As long as people actually honor real nobility, they will be appreciated. Beautiful tribute there. Now I'm going to continue on and read this up the other side. The souls of the righteous are in the hand of God. In the sight of the unwise, they seem to die, and their departure is taken for misery, but they are in peace. And right here, General John Echols. Now, over here, I don't think he's actually buried here. I think he was buried in this really impressive tomb right here. You can see right on top, Echols. I just recently shared a video from Norfolk where there was one of Mosby's Rangers, became one of the wealthiest men, and he had willed $100,000 to make a huge a mausoleum, which today would be equivalent of millions and millions of dollars. It was incredible. So this is also impressive. Echols, no surprise, very successful. I'll do the best I can. I don't know if you can see through here. A little tough to see, but here's the perspective. Very prominent location here, right on the top of the entry of Thornrose Cemetery. There's the entry to it right there. And of course, General John Echols' gravesite. All right, so that's my little tour of. Now, there's no doubt about it, there's many other Confederate veterans here. You could talk about all these for much, much longer. But I'll leave that for now. I decided to include this in one thing. I think this video has been going on for a full half an hour now. You never know how it's going to turn out. So leaving this with you today, once again here in this peaceful location, here in Staunton, Virginia, Shenandoah Valley area, here in Thornrose Cemetery, where I started off this video by sharing the Confederate section, Stonewall Cemetery up this road, and making a transition over to Jeb Hotchkiss's grave, which is just right. Barely see it right over here. And then continuing on to General John Echols. I do this so we can pay our respects together, to bring this to your attention, so you're coming out here and you can realize there's some really cool things to see. These things need to be preserved, maintained, and respected. I hope we can all do that. Also, to do this to document, because I actually started videotaping, documenting things years ago, and there's been many, many memorials now that are gone. And so it's important to also preserve these the best I can, share these with you, and talk a little about these fascinating, extraordinary men, their families, other people. So take care, y'all. Once again, from here in Staunton, Virginia.